to see if it's there, because that's really going to help us tie in this idea of tonal harmony to our unorthodox double harmonic major scale. So now let's look at some of the harmonic implications of C double harmonic major. So we're going to construct some of the harmony based on the C double harmonic major scale a little differently than what I just showed you. And let me show you why. So I'll use the strategy or format that we just used for the C major scale and apply it to C double harmonic major. I'll just stack thirds on top of notes in the scale using only notes from the scale. So C, E, G, I can get a C chord. Pretty straightforward. What's the problem with that, you ask? Well, it sort of doesn't highlight the fact that if I were to consider this A flat by its enharmonic designation, I could technically get C, E, G sharp. You know, in other words, if I'm just stacking thirds, I would see E to A flat, or actually I would never see it at all because it's a fourth, right? The idea of using this harmonic color or texture as it relates to the scale would never even occur to me. So if I do this stacking thirds technique on top of E, I would get E, G, and B. Easy peasy, E minor chord. But what I might miss, because of the enharmonic designation of this A flat, is that I could also get an E major. And yes, I know technically what I'm playing here is an A flat, and A flat's not an E chord, but we're trying to look at all of the possible harmonic options present if I use all of these notes in this scale. So therefore, I would say that E minor and E major, by way of this A flat, aka G sharp, are both possibilities. And these are possibilities that, like I said before, would go unnoticed if all I'm doing is stacking thirds on top of thirds. So let's look at another way of doing this that will expose all of the possibilities here within in the C double harmonic major scale. So one thing we can do to kind of broaden our horizons and see all the possibilities within a scale or a note grouping is to not stack thirds on top of thirds. It's just to take a chord quality. In this case, let's start with like C major, superimpose it onto our circle of fifths, and see what kind of shape or graph we get. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take C, E, and G. I'm going to take the notes of a C major triad, C, E, and G, and to just kind of connect the dots and see what kind of shape I get as a result of that. And I have a series of shapes up here, actually, that represent many different chord qualities. And we've created basically a triangle. So now I know a major triad, as it relates to our circle of fifths, or our note grouping, or our scale, is going to be this shape right here, this triangle. And the root of that chord is marked up here in this corner. So here I have a C major triad. Let's put this back over the C scale. So now I see all the notes that are possible in the C scale. I see that C major is an option. If I rotate it like this, I have, oh yeah, look at that, F, A, C. Now I know F is an option as it relates to a major triad. Let's see if I put the root on G. Can I get a, yes, G, B, D. I can get a G major triad. Let's rotate it again. Can I get a D major triad? No, I cannot, because F sharp is outside of my graph that represents the C major scale. So I can put this root corner, or this note, if you will, on any of the notes in the scale, and I can see, can I get D? No. Can I get A? No. Can I get E major? No. Not without altering the notes in the scale, not if I wanted to stay true to only notes that are in the C scale. So by doing this, I was able to find that I have C, F, and G as my only options for major triads in this scale, in C Ionian. And here, for example, here's a 7 flat 5 shape. This is the shape of a 7 flat 5 chord superimposed onto the circle of fifths. And if I can put this on top of my C, and I can see there is no possible way I can get this chord shape because I have all these nodes off down here that aren't a part of notes in this case. So I know right off the bat that 7 flat 5, not an option as it relates to our C Ionian or our C major scale. Let's grab the major 7 shape. So here is the shape, this trapezoid, that you would use to indicate a major 7 chord. So if I put that right there, I see that C major 7 is an option. It corresponds with all of the nodes on the C Ionian superimposed in our graph. If I rotate it this way, I can also see that F, here's the 1, again marked in that corner, F, A, C, and E is an option. Can I get a G major 7? Well, let's rotate the root over to G. I got G, D, good, B, awesome, but I can't get an F sharp, therefore I cannot get G major 7 as it relates to C Ionian. So by seeing these structures or chords as these graphs or shapes and then superimposing them onto the circle of fifths or the graph that represents our scale, even better, we're going to see all the possibilities that might arise as opposed to just stacking thirds on top of thirds. Let's do this with C double harmonic major and see what we can come up with. So here's our graph of the double harmonic major shape superimposed onto the circle of fifths. And over here, what we mapped out earlier, well, I know these roots are present as it relates to our scale. So now we're going to see what kind of chords we can come up with based on using these shapes up here. I have all these shapes that represent either the major 7 within the graph or a major triad or a minor triad, minor 7 shape, 7 flat 5, dominant 7. So first question I would want to ask myself is, can I get a major triad based on this note grouping? So if I put my major triad shape, superimpose it onto, I can see, yeah, C, E, and G. I can get a major 1 chord. This is important. This is a crucial piece of information for me that helps me understand what kind of landscape I'm going to be playing, improvising, or writing in. Can I get, let's take it a step further, can I get a major 7 chord? Let's see. Here's our major 7 shape. Trapezoid again, and yes, cool. So I can get a 1 major 7 with my pen based on our scale. So now let's see if I can get a major 4 chord. Let's use the major triad shape here. Assign, our 4 is F, assign the root node to F, and I cannot. There is no A natural in our chord. So can I get a minor 4 chord? Can this happen? This would kind of imply that I was borrowing from minor, which would be kind of cool. And yes, I can. F, A flat, and C. So now I know that a minor 4 chord is an option as it relates to our chord scale. All right, and if I wanted to see if a minor 7 was also a choice, I could just merely grab the minor 7 shape here and see that it is not, because E flat lands outside of my graph that represents the scale that we're working with. So let's move over to the G. Can I get a major 5 chord based on this graph? Where's my major? There it is. So if I put the 1 node at 12 o'clock, so I can already see that the D is outside of the realm of possibilities there. So this is not an option, but is 7 flat 5 an option? Can I get a G7 flat 5? I can. So that's really cool. That's interesting. I need to know G7 flat 5. And this isn't our only option as it relates to G as the root, but it is 1. Or it might be our only option. I don't know. I'd have to take all of these shapes, do this by hand, and figure out what my options are. And that's kind of time consuming and laborious. So that's why we're going to switch over to Tessitura Pro, and it's going to do all of that work for us. So there's our 7 flat 5 we were just talking about, our G7 flat 5 in this case being used as a nice sort of like 5-1 cadence, typically how you might find it in a more tonal piece. So let's go to Tessitura Pro and show you some of the ways we can find these shapes a little easier than, you know, cutting out pieces of paper and superimposing them on our graph manually. So we have our main structure, the double harmonic major, already loaded up, And next to it, I'm looking for any substructures, anything related to this rectangle basically that represents our 7 flat 5 that we were looking for, that dominant quality that's so important when it comes to a sort of tonal landscape that we're trying to create. And now I can see down here also where or on what notes in our note grouping I can root this chord quality. So we found it on G7 flat 5, but there's also one on C sharp 7 flat 5 as well. Excuse me. There it is right there. So let's see if we can find any other chords with dominant qualities to them as it relates to our note grouping. So let's look at the common chord shapes and graphs that might show up in a song here, and let's go with dominant 7. Let's see if any of those show up. So here I see, yeah, it works. This substructure fits inside of our main structure. It can only be rooted on one note, C sharp 7, or to be enharmonically consistent, D flat 7 with our scale. So that's really good to know. That's actually really cool because that fits with this notion of using a sub 5, D flat 7 right there. It's got that nice tritone substitution as it relates to our normal 5 chord. So now we have 2 chords here that have a dominant quality to them that's going to allow us to create a really cool sort of tonal landscape with our note grouping. We talked about before, there's definitely a C major 7 as it relates to our map here. We found that chord as an option. Let's see if there's any other major 7 chords as an option with our note grouping. So let's find the major 7. Where are you? Right there, and see what pops up. Okay, so besides C major 7, there's also a C sharp major 7 or D flat major 7 that can be created using this scale. This is a really cool chord to use. This is kind of consistent with using the flat 2 on our map in the subdominant region over here. So over here I'm going to put D flat major 7. That's awesome. So now we have more chords at our disposal, more is becoming clear, more options to pick and choose from. Now let's try to find some minor triads. We already know F minor is here. It's our minor 4 chord. We found that earlier, but let's see if there's any other options as it relates to minor triads. So let's click on the minor triad substructure. So there I see F minor. We knew that was there, but now I also notice E minor is an option. That kind of makes sense. Usually the 3 chord in our map is minor. There's also a D flat minor. We're not going to map that right now. There is really no connective tissue between a traditional map of tonal harmony and what we're trying to do with double harmonic major as it relates to that chord. So we're going to leave it off the map for academic purposes, but it is definitely something worth exploring if you're just trying to write using the colors that you can find from this scale. So I wouldn't take it off the table altogether as it relates to writing and exploring the space, but for, like I said, the academic purposes of superimposing it onto our map, we're going to leave it off for right now. So minor triads, check. Let's just do one more glance and see if there's any major triads we might be able to find other than C, of course. So let's go to the major triad. So of course, yes, there's our C. D flat, that makes sense because it's our sub 5. If a dominant D flat is there, then of course a major triad version of D flat will also be there. But what's really interesting is this E major that shows up. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of put that as a neighboring option next to the 3 chord. So this gives us some really cool things to do with that 3 chord, giving it both a major and minor quality at the same time. So now that we found our chords, let's look at some of the chord scales